Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Ben. I am the Education Associate at Tuoliomi. If you don't know, Tuoliomi is a conservation nonprofit based in Woodland. Our mission is to conserve, enhance, restore, and enjoy the public lands in our region. We mostly focus on the northern inner coast range and neighboring areas of the Central Valley. And today's topic is going to be vernal pools and prairie wildflowers found in the Woodland Regional Park Preserve. And so I'll start off with a little bit of an introduction to the park as well as to vernal pools generally, and then we'll get down to business and take a look at all of the pretty flowers. And so Woodland Regional Park Preserve is located along County Road 102 on the east side of Woodland. This site was originally purchased by the city of Woodland in the 1930s for use as a landfill, which it was used for from about the mid 1950s through the late 1970s, at which point the landfill was decommissioned. Dirt was dug up on site, creating what is now the pond at the park, and used to cover up the landfills. After that, for about 20 years, the park was used as both a home base for the Woodland Davis Aero modelers. The parking lot you can see here is actually the old runway for the Model Airplane Club. There's also a rodeo on site that used a different part of the property during the same time period. By the late 2000s, plans were underway to develop the site into a shopping center along the lines of the Costco Plaza, located just a little bit to the north. However, botanists from the area surveyed the site and discovered several rare plant species, including the federally endangered palmate racted birdsbeak. This led to a pivot, and the city decided to protect the area as a nature preserve. And since then, has been working with a number of local groups, including Tuoliomi, Yolo Audubon, as well as Explore It, and a number of citizens from the local community to develop the property into a nature preserve. Quite a bit of progress has been made over the last few years, including the installment of a pump, so this can be a year-round pond, and ADA accessible trail, as well as installation of amenities for wildlife, such as bird boxes and bat boxes. The park is not yet open to the public, though the latest that I've been hearing is that it should be open hopefully by the end of 2024. So to give you an idea of what the property looks like, this is a drone video that was shot at the end of March of this year. This was during our annual Spring Thing fundraiser event. And so coming into view on the top of the screen, we can see some of these covered landfill mounds. We're looking at the permanent wetland with a seasonal wetland to the north of the path. So one thing I'd like to point out here is that, this video is from the end of March, and I'm mostly just seeing green out here, not really a whole lot of color from wildflowers. And so I came back out to the park just a few weeks later, and this was the scene. And so in multiple areas of the park, there were big swaths of beautiful wildflowers. And these were mostly concentrated in some areas of vernal pools that we have at the Woodland Regional Park Preserve. And so a vernal pool is a seasonal wetland that forms in areas where there's some kind of an impermeable layer located underneath the topsoil. And so on the western side of the Central Valley, we have clay pan vernal pools. And so this is where there is a layer of clay located a foot or two under the topsoil that will basically absorb the first rainfall. Clay particles will expand and then block passage of any additional water down through that clay layer. So as rains continue, it will saturate the topsoil, and in any areas where there are, slight depressions, water will form pools. And so these are seasonal pools. There's no inflow of water, there's no outflow of water, and they will all dry up, likely by late spring in the case of larger vernal pools. Or in the case of the pools at Woodland Regional Park Preserve, which are fairly small, they've already dried up as of the end of April. And so in the Central Valley, where we have a relatively small amount of rainfall, these pools are a pretty important resource for both plant and animal species. However, because that resource is only around for a relatively short period of time, plants that live in vernal pools really need to be specialized to complete their life cycle quickly, get pollinated, produce seeds, and then have those seeds kind of sit in the soil through that, kind of inhospitable, hot, dry summer to await the next year's rains. We also have what our board member Glenn Holstein likes to refer to as California prairie, and specifically this is alkali prairie. And so these are areas where we don't have the depressions necessary for formation of vernal pools, but we do have lots of sedimentary soils that are derived from marine sediments in the Coast Range. Those sediments are fairly salty, resulting in a fairly salty soil, which is again challenging for plants to live in. And so many of the plants that live in these alkali prairie environments, are relatively rare and are not found many other places. So that's a brief introduction to vernal pools. Now let's take a look at some of the species that we have in our vernal pools at WRPP. And so because these vernal pools, tend to depend on, the location of depressions in the soil, it'll often look like there are almost little rivers of wildflowers that are moving through these meadow environments. And that's because those flowers, those vernal pool specialists, are growing where there was standing water just a few weeks ago. And one of the things I really enjoy most about vernal pool flowers, they're pretty small, so you really have to get, down on your hands and knees and look a little bit closer to see what's going on. Here I see some gold fields and popcorn flowers, and it looks like some woolly marbles down at the very bottom there. All right, so first species to talk about are goldfields. And so there are a number of different goldfield species in California, including some that are vernal pool specialists and some that live outside of vernal pool environments. These tend to be some of the most numerous flowers in our vernal pool areas, both at Woodland Regional Park and also at places like Jepson Prairie. And so they are in the sunflower family, and they depend, like many of our vulnerable plants, on specialist native bees for pollination. And so because all of these flowers are, flowering at roughly the same time, It's really important to have pollinators that are really specifically trying to visit one species of flower to ensure that pollination does happen properly. And so many of our vernal pool plants have co-evolved with different species of bees to the point where these bees will only visit certain species of flowers. And so this has resulted in a great diversification of our native bees here in California. So we have something like 1,600 different species of native bee and over 200 right here in Yolo County, which is pretty incredible. And so goldfields, like sunflowers, have composite flower heads. And so when you look at a goldfield flower, what looks like, at first glance to be just a single flower, is actually an inflorescence with many smaller flowers all packed together. Um, and so you can see the ovaries down at the base here. These will turn into the seeds once pollination is complete and the flower matures into fruit. Another common site in a lot of our vernal pools, as well as at WRPP, are popcorn flowers. At least this year, these are probably the most numerous wildflower on the site. Similarly to goldfields, there are both vernal pool varieties of popcorn flower, as well as non-vernal pool varieties that prefer hillside sites. There's some popcorn flowers and goldfields blowing in the wind. And here's what they look like close up. So the vernal pool varieties of popcorn flowers, the flower heads are really quite small. Um, they're probably, less than half the diameter of a penny. Whereas the non-vernal pool varieties tend to have somewhat larger flowers, so maybe approaching the size of a dime. Another common vernal pool species are woolly marbles. I love that name. So woolly marbles are only found in vernal pools, and they tend to really like the wettest portion of the vernal pool. So they're going to start growth often underwater, and will be found in the lowest portions of the dried up vernal pool environments. Here's what they look like close up. All right, so on to my favorite group of vernal pool flowers. These are the Downingia. At WRPP, we have the Harlequin Downingia. And so here's a little video clip of it growing. So we've got Harlequin Downingias with woolly marbles and popcorn flowers here. Let's watch that again. Yeah, beautiful. Downingias are generally only found in vernal pools, and they're mostly restricted to the vernal pools on the western side of the Central Valley. That's because the vernal pools on the eastern side of the Central Valley are not claypan vernal pools. They're actually have a rocky pan underneath the subsurface. And so that gives those vernal pools on the east side of the valley a bit of a different chemistry in their soils than the vernal pools we have here on the west, which leads to some differences in the plants. So this is our Harlequin Downingia. This is another one that has relationships with specialist native bees. Just a really incredible coloration and shape to this flower. It's one I look forward to seeing every year. We also have lupins, and so now we're going to be shifting into looking at some of the plants that are found away from the vernal pools at the preserve in more of the California prairie or alkali prairie environments. And so this is a miniature lupin, and so these are really quite small. So the flower heads may be only about that big. It is in the pea family, so these are going to be nitrogen fixers. We have a few different species of native clovers in Woodland Regional Park Preserve. These are also in the pea family. And so I've arranged them here in order of increasing flower size. And so this first one is the dwarf sack clover. Its flower is maybe about the size of a small marble, so quite a small flower. This one, tomcat clover, maybe a little bit smaller than a ping pong ball. And then our bull clover, this is quite a large flower, so somewhere in between a ping pong ball and a tennis ball, so pretty impressively large. These are all relatives of the clover that's commonly found in residential yards, the white clover, but these are native to California. Red maize, this is in the same family as miner's lettuce, if you're familiar with that. Like miner's lettuce, this does have edible leaves, and the seeds of this plant were used as a food source of some significance by a number of different California Indian tribes. This is one I tend to see in somewhat disturbed areas, typically, somewhat separated from other plants. All right, next up we have blowwives. This is a really common species around vernal pools and in grasslands. This one is interesting. It's another example of a compound flower that has many individual flowers all packed together into a single flower head or inflorescence. What's interesting here is that this is as much as this flower is going to open up. So it really doesn't unfurl at all until pollination is complete and the flower opens up to show off the fruit. So this is very similar to a dandelion. So we have these winged structures here that are attached to the seeds. And so as the wind blows, these will carry the seeds away to other locations. One of the most special plants we have at Woodland Regional Park Preserve is the alkali milk vetch. So along with the palmate bracted bird's beak, this is one of those rare plants that helped get Woodland Regional Park Preserve protected as a nature preserve. And so these are rare and are only found in California. And these flowers are also really, really small. They're maybe only about that big, so quite small. Last up, we have valley tassels. This is a paintbrush, so it's a relative of the Indian paintbrush. And like the Indian paintbrush, it is a hemiparasite, so it's going to be tapping into the roots of neighboring plants, in this case, tapping into the roots of some of the grasses growing around it and extracting sugars and other nutrients from those plants. Okay, so that does it for this virtual tour of the Woodland Regional Park vernal pools and alkali prairie areas. I hope you enjoyed all of the wildflowers. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below and we would be happy to respond. And I do encourage you to go onto our website, tuoliomi.org, to check out our upcoming events, including our virtual lecture series and our wildflower tours that will be ongoing for a little while this spring. All right, thanks again for watching. Take care.